press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hello students, welcome back to your social science class. Today we are going to continue the lesson social and religious reform movements. In the previous class we studied about the Ramakrishna mission. Today we will move forward into the Theosophical Society, okay, which was started by somebody else and then it flourished because of Annie Besant. Okay. So we will study the Theosophical Society today. Alright, Annie Besant, Theosophical Society. Now this also deals with certain events, but they are foreigners who had come to India. Okay, foreigners who had come to India and had influenced themselves with the Indian culture and the Indian traditions, and that is how they were influenced by the Vedas and the Vedic traditions, and that is how they went on to start the Theosophical Society because of their influence on Indian heritage and Indian culture. So this was basically first founded not by Annie Besant, she flourished it further, but founded by Madam Blavatsky and Colonel H.S. Olcott. Okay. So they founded it first. Who is that? Madam Blavatsky and Colonel, this is Colonel, okay, H.S., don't pronounce it wrong, it is Colonel, H.S. Olcott, okay, Blavatsky, split the words if you cannot pronounce always, okay, and Colonel H.S. Olcott, alright. Now they started this because they came to a place called Adyar in Calcutta. Where did they come? They came to a place called as Adyar in Calcutta. Okay? Sorry, Adyar near Madras. I'm sorry. Adyar near Madras. Okay, I got confused with the Ramakrishna mission. Alright. Adyar near Madras, and that is how they established the Theosophical Society, the head office of the Theosophical Society in 1886. Okay, this is how they started their Theosophical Society. In 1886. All right. So what did they do? They came to Adyar in Madras, okay, to India. Who was that? Madam Blavatsky and Colonel H.S. Olcott, and they began their head office of the Theosophical Society in Madras in 1886. Now, why did they begin this Theosophical Society? Now, if you take the word in religious terms, okay, Christianity has studies of theology. Okay, that's basically about God and scriptures and other things. Okay, so those who go on to do religious studies, to become priests and nuns, okay, they go into their studies of theology. But this is not as exactly as what that theology is. This is a different mixture of theology and philosophy. Okay, so theosophical. Now here they wanted to discuss what did they want to contribute was they wanted to learn about the religions, they wanted to learn about the philosophies that were there, they wanted to learn about science that was there. So three basic things that they wanted to make a study on was religion, science and philosophy. Okay, they wanted to make a comparative study on three different aspects, okay, comparison of three different aspects, that is religion, science and philosophy. And that is why they went on to constitute this body of the Theosophical Society in 1886. Alright, now they wanted to discover a certain kind of spirit that was there within the human beings. As in, like, each being or each individual is important in its or his or her own way, and that is why each one's contribution to the society is also equal in terms of their capacity that they have. If a certain person has a capacity, a greater amount of capacity, and another person has a lesser amount of capacity, both are contributing, because that is actually what is the capacity of each individual. Alright, so this is how they felt that every being has a spirit which is hidden within him or herself, and that has to be brought out, that has to be put down and laid before the people. Now, if you have a certain talent, for example, okay, you may be a good singer, you may be singing at home or in your family functions, but you have never experimented your singing talent in school, college or anywhere outside in the society when there have been competitions. But there may have been one person who has just encouraged you and motivated you and pushed you to do that competition. For example, if there was a competition in the community there, okay, or during festivals, during Christmas, during Deepavali and during Eid, other times if they have any competitions done, okay, and if somebody has just pushed you into taking that competition and participating in it, and you won the place, okay, you may have won first, second, third or whatever it is, but you won some place in that. And that made you realize that, oh, my talent is so much appreciative in the other way also. Rather, I was only confined to my family and I was only confined to a limited number of people. But now when I have won a prize, I know that I can show away my talent to many other people who are there. So what did you realize here? You realized that your singing, the capacity for the talent of singing is much, much greater than what you actually thought. So there should be one person, isn't it, to push that spirit within you. Sometimes it is your own self that has to push. Sometimes there are people who encourage. There are people who discourage also. So much you must let them go. Okay? But you must take in people who encourage you, say good about you. Take in only good things. That is how life will be better. Forget what is happening in and around you, which is not acceptable for you. Just leave it around, that's it. The days will pass, life will go on as it is. So that's how these two people, okay, they believed that there is a spirit within the human beings, and that has to be a spirit that is very strong, and that spirit needs to be brought out, okay, that spirit needs to be discovered, but it is actually hidden in every human being. Alright, now what did they declare? They declared and said that universal brotherhood is important. Universal is all. Universal brotherhood is you and I stay together in peace. You and I stay together in a community properly. Universal brotherhood. That is, we must have a feeling that, oh, he is a member of my community. He is a member and a part of the society that I live in, and I must accept him or her as and how he or she is. Okay, so universal brotherhood. They believed and they declared that we must have universal brotherhood through their Theosophical Society that they began. Now, this society that was there, it took its basic principles from the Hindu scriptures like the Veda, the Upanishads, okay, the Sankhya Yoga, the Vedanta philosophy, from all these. So what are the four ones? Four sacred scriptures that they derived their principles from. One is the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Sankhya Yoga and the Vedanta philosophy. So Vedas, Upanishads, Sankhya Yoga and Vedanta philosophy. from these 4 holy scriptures of the Hindu culture, they derived their principles. Whose principles? Theosophical Society. These 2 people, Madam and the Colonel, derived their principles from the 4 scriptures of the Hindu religion. Now, there were a lot of problems in the society, and they tried to find a lot of answers to why everything is happening in and around is not so good, why everything that is happening in and around is not acceptable by the people or not in sync with what people are actually doing. So what did they do? They when they went on to find solutions for the problems, they also tried to learn what actually is the problem and give them the particular solutions that are there. Now, how did they find the solutions? Was they studied the ancient philosophical thoughts, okay, that is the ancient Indian philosophical thoughts. I told you in the beginning they were influenced by the Indian culture and heritage, and that is why they derived all of their thoughts and all of their principles from whatever was happening in our country. So here, when they wanted some solutions to their problems, they went back to the Indian philosophies, okay, Indian ancient philosophies, old philosophies, that were the thoughts that were given earlier, theories that were given, okay. Now, theory is a fundamental research, okay. That is, you give the theory and keep quiet. There are other people who apply that fundamental theory, the basic theory, and make it applied research. Okay, so there are two kinds, where is fundamental research and applied research. Here, the fundamental research, that is theories, were written down, basic research was written down, theoretical ideas and principles were written down by people in the Indian philosophy. Madam and Colonel took out their philosophies, took out their principles, and they applied it. What did they do? They did an applied research, okay, analytical and applied research on the problems that were happening, and that is how they derived their solutions. Now, if you are working on an experiment in a science lab, what do? You have a certain theory that's written down, isn't it? You have certain instructions that are written down, and you follow and mix all your whatever you have to mix, okay, and then you get some solution out of it, you get some result out of it, and then you write about what you have got. Any experiment that you do, okay. So this is what they did. Theories were written on Indian philosophy and Indian thoughts and ideas. To get their solutions for the problems that were happening in India, they went back to those theories and then they derived their solutions, all right. Now, after that, this society, they tried for a change or a reformation of the Hindu religion. They wanted a change in how Hinduism was practiced, or how people of the Hindu religion practiced themselves. Now, when they wanted to take on and make a change or make some reformation in the Hindu religion, who took more interest was the foreigners, the Westerners, okay, than the Indians themselves. The Westerners or the foreigners took a lot of interest into learning these principles and thoughts of the Indian culture. Maybe one way it is because of the foreigners dealing with the society, maybe that can be a chance, or sometimes it was maybe other people were also influenced actually by what was happening in our culture and our heritage. After that, when all this was going on, there came an Irish lady called as Annie Besant, okay. She was an Irish person. Irish lady Annie Besant, she came to India in 1893. So this was started in 1886, she came in 1893, okay. With the arrival of Annie Besant to India, the Theosophical Society, she joined hands with these people, and because of her ideas and thoughts, it grew more, okay. It never stopped growing, and she went on to become the member of this society, and that is how she contributed in order to make this society better. She was, this is all facts and figures, so you must, I'll just read it out for you. She was born in 1847 in London, okay. Then her husband was an Anglican church priest, was a priest at the Anglican church, okay. There was Anglicanism, and just like the Protestants, the Roman Catholics and the Anglicans in England at that time, okay. Anglican churches were there, kings were ruling in that time at England, and with the arrival Catholicism, okay, Catholics were more prominent, and that is how different sects in Catholicism also grew, okay, being Protestants, being Anglicans, being Roman Catholics. So Christianity was prominent there. She was a Catholic. Her husband was a priest at this Anglican church, but she divorced her husband, and then she became an active member of the society in 1889. Okay, she came down to India in 1893 and then became a full-time or a full contributor to the Theosophical Society in 1889. What is more interesting to us is she had a lot of knowledge on the Vedanta philosophy of the Indian scriptures or the Indian culture that is there. Vedanta philosophy was what she mastered in, and that is how she could bring and feel that Indian culture is far more superior than the Western culture. Because now if you just do a compare and contrast of the foreign traditions and our traditions, now if we have to do a festival for that example, or a marriage function, okay, a wedding that has to take place. If a wedding has to take place, we have so many rituals that are going, isn't it? But if you go to the West, those rituals don't matter at all. Okay, we have rituals before the wedding, after the wedding, and on the day of the wedding. So many rituals that are happening in and around us. Traditions that have been passed on generation to generation. Whereas in the West, marriages are don't have that much of tradition. Okay, maybe they go to their place of worship, they go to the church, they go to wherever they have to say their prayers, and then they come back and party and enjoy. But we have a lot of traditions. We do enjoy, we do party, but we have a lot of traditions including in that, and we follow it. So Annie Besant also felt that Indian culture is far more superior than the Western culture that is there, and she believed that Western culture is based on materialism. Now here in India also we have started to believe in materialism. Materialism is going after things, okay, or wanting worldly things more. Now there are some people who are all after all behind money, richness, and they believe that having a lot of money, having a lot of richness is success. It is not success in that way. Success can be in many ways. Now I can define success in a different way. You may have a different version of what is success. So it should be left to the individual as to how successful they want to become and what they consider success to be. Now I may be considering success as to build up my career or move on in life and do something. Okay? Your version of having your way of success may be different. 10 other classmates of yours may be having a different version of success. What we must understand is acceptance there of their version of success also. And not run behind possessing things, not run behind possessing money, not hoarding things in the house and saying that, oh, I have such a big house and there are so many things in my house. Now, for example, you see, if people build their houses, I have seen people, they just build their houses and then just keep it around, but there is nobody to stay in the house. Why do you build, my question in my mind is, why do you build such a big house when there is nobody to stay in that? Our lives have become like that. We are more into possessing things than loving people. Okay, our love is fading because of that. Our love, our care and share is fading because of the things that we want to possess. Things will perish and go. Now, for example, if you've bought a mobile phone, it is manufactured in such a way that in at least 5 years or 6 years time it will get spoiled. Depends on how you use it, okay? If you don't put it down, or it will come for a little long. Your keypad phone comes for a long time. I'm talking about the touchscreen phones. Those are actually manufactured in such a way that it will spoil. Because if that doesn't spoil, they don't have customers there. So you understand the cycle. They manufacture it in such a way that they will have more customers in the coming years. Okay, sometimes your battery gets spoiled, sometimes your phone doesn't charge, or sometimes your phone keeps on hanging. Okay, why? Your system has become corrupt there, and it is manufactured in such a way that it has to become corrupt. Alright, so you must understand this. Whenever you are buying things, you must understand they manufacture goods keeping in mind of having more customers. Now if you and I buy a phone, okay, you buy one phone, I buy another phone, maybe my phone may go for 5 years, your phone may go for 8 years, whatever. After one year it is going to get spoiled, isn't it? Now if they have manufactured in such a way that our phone is lifelong, it will never get spoiled, then they are under loss. Why would they want to be under loss? Okay, so you think about this when you are buying things. Anything for that matter. When you go to a shop and buy certain items you want to eat or whatever you want to prepare, you must check the expiry date. Things that expire soon are kept in front. This is marketing, okay? Things that expire soon are kept in front, things that expire late are kept behind. What are you going to pick? The first one that is there. Without seeing, you pick the first one. When you bring home, 2 days it is spoiled. What is gone? Your money is lost with them. Now they have an additional, you are going back to buy it again. They have double profit out of it. So if you act wisely, you save for yourself. If you don't act wisely, you lose out on your money and they have their profit. So you must think who has to make a lot of profit, you or them. Okay, you need their things. You need their things, I agree. But I'm not telling it happens always, okay? It's not always that they keep the products which expire soon on the first row, no, always. But I have seen to bazaars that I've gone, some of them keep. I'm not mentioning any bazaar, but some of the bazaars that I have gone, they do keep it. That is the way it is marketed. Otherwise, if they keep the product that expires soon in the end, who is going to buy it? It is a waste for them, waste of production. They don't want to waste this production that is there. Okay? Okay, I'm going apart from what is to be written in your text, but yet I wanted to give you this information, so you must think on it, alright? Okay, we stopped at materialism. She said, because Westerners are going behind this materialism, Indian culture is far more superior because they don't go behind materialism. But today our Indian culture is also becoming of materialism because we are not adapting the cultures that we have, but rather deriving our cultures from the West. And the derivations are always double-handed, okay? What is double-handed? I use it and second-handed, okay? I use it and I give it to you. So what has happened? When you have derived something, they have used it first and you use it the second time. So derivations are always less quantitative, alright? Okay. Then what was her major achievement was she translated the Bhagavad Gita, okay, that was her major achievement. Then she wanted to start she wanted to take on this movement basically for the reformation of Hinduism and their cultures. Now she did a comparative study, okay, she compared two religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. She compared both of them and she made an analysis of what has to be changed or what kind of reformation has to be brought in the society. Alright, she was called as the Shweta Saraswati by the people around her. What was she called? Shweta Saraswati. Then she wanted people to get educated. All of them must get educated was her goal. And then she opened schools and also started a Central Hindu College at Benras in 1898. Okay, 1898 she started a college in Benras, that is Central Hindu College. Now that institution went for a very long time and then it went on to become a university because there was another contributor to that. Another person who had contributed to that is Madan Mohan Malviya. Okay, in 1916 he also went on to contribute this university and it flourished. She started 2 periodicals. Okay, periodicals are just like your magazines. Okay, just like your magazines, periodicals are they have a certain time frame where they publish it. Now, if you get newspapers in your house, those are not exactly periodicals, but I am giving an example. You get one additional paper maybe on Fridays or Sundays. Okay, certain kind of, they have a time frame of when they have to send periodicals, a certain period that they have to send. She started 2 periodicals, that is New India and Commonweal. Commonweal. Check out the spelling, page number 53. Okay, W-E-A-L, not W-H-E-E-L. Okay, Commonweal and New India. Why did she start this 2 periodicals? Is for people to make discussions on social issues that were going on and the problems that were happening in the society. For the problems and the social issues that were going on, she began these 2 periodicals that are there. Then she started this Home Rule League in 1916 and initiated the Home Rule movement in the Madras region. Okay. Go to page number 54. You must follow the copies when I take class, otherwise you will not follow. Just don't be passive and listen. Okay. Now see, go to page number 52. The Home Rule is written there. 2 Home Rule movements were in existence in India by 1916. One movement is itself in Pune and covered areas of Maharashtra and central provinces, Berar region and northern part of present Karnataka under the leadership of Tilak. Then another one was in Madras under Annie Besant. Okay. That is how they went on to. Now, why did they start this Home Rule? Is the Irish people who were under the British started this Home Rule. Home Rule is, I want to govern myself, self-governing. Home Rule, my country is my home. So, I want to rule my country, Home Rule. Okay. So, they started this, and here in India also, because the British were ruling, she went on to fight for the Home League movement and the Home Rule movement, so that India can govern itself. Alright, self-governing. Be capable on your own to govern your own home and own country. Okay, she started it in the Madras region. Then she went on to appreciate and went on to create a lot of religious movements, Reformation movements that were there. And that is how it brought a little sense into Hinduism and in the 19th century. Okay. She wanted to focus on Hinduism, isn't it? We have discussed. And when she wanted to make this reformation, once she started a reformation in Hinduism, Hinduism started to make a lot more sense than earlier. Okay. And everything has been a part and parcel. Part and parcel is a phrase. Part and parcel is it belonged to her, okay, part and parcel of Annie Besant. Now, she was also involved in the freedom struggle movement when India was fighting for independence, and she became the first woman president of, it should be woman, okay, correct that word there, woman and women, singular and plural, okay, correct that word there, it is woman. First woman president of the Indian National Congress, woman and women. Singular, plural. Okay, correct that word in page number 53. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last but sixth word. Woman and women. She was the first woman president of the Indian National Congress. So that is why you must not blindly read the textbook. Okay, you must pick mistakes like this. Now we cannot be blaming them because see, to proofread or to make such a big textbook, it consumes a lot of time, isn't it? So, let us appreciate for what they have done. Whenever you find a certain 1 or 2 mistakes here and there will be there, okay. It's, after all, human beings are doing it, isn't it? So, you just correct it for yourself, alright? Okay. So, with this I would like to stop, students, today. Next class we will go into Sri Narayan Dharma Paripalana Yogam and Periyar. Okay, with that we will wind up the lesson. Today is the 7th part, maybe 8th part if we can finish, or 9th part if possible. Alright, we will see in the next class how much we can move forward with, because Ramakrishna Mission and Theosophical Society was a little long description what they had given. It took us a lot of time to understand and deal with this particular piece in the textbook. Okay. Alright students, thank you very much for listening. Please read how much we have finished today and get ready for the next class.